Eddie, I've been listening to you for maybe all my life. My parents are big jazz fans, so my father would have put on Crossings because that was one of his favorite albums, you know.
Oh, that goes way back.
Yes, so your sound is very feels very close to me, and I think in 1999 or 2000 I saw you with Herbie and the Gershwin's World
Oh, yes.
band in Düsseldorf.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that distinctly.
Oh yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great. Me too. That particular concert.
You were
because
there?
I was there. I saw you in Düsseldorf, and maybe I had just learned to play. I thought I had learned to play Cantaloupe Island, and I had no idea what you were doing. I still remember this feeling of having no clue, but loving it. You know, this particular
Oh, yeah.
feeling is a beautiful
It's
combination.
like lost in space.
Exactly.
It's
Yes.
a nice feeling.
Yes. Do you remember when you had that feeling?
Every time I play with Herbie Hancock.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Herbie used to have a little mechanism. He would pretend, like if there's 4 beats, he would pretend that 1 is 2, or,
Right.
or 4 is 1, to throw himself out. He says being lost is the motor to his inspiration.
Beautiful. Yeah. I played with John Scofield, and he told me that his impression of Herbie, playing with Herbie, was that Herbie was trying to get lost on purpose, because
Oh, yes, this is true.
where he felt it was happening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then he's just like lost in the void,
Right.
you know, and that's the excitement for him. That's
Right.
kind of became the excitement for me, playing that kind of music. It's not bebop where it changes, dogmatic, just right there. When you're out in space and it's a collective effort, everybody's listening to each other, and that's the excitement for me.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, how did you? I just read in a book that I revisited about the Mwandishi band. I read that before you played with Herbie, you studied that music very closely, and
I
you
did.
were very well prepared for the first opportunity that you had with
Well, I wish I
Herbie.
had been prepared a little better, but I had listened to his record, his previous records, like Empyrean Isles, Speak Like a Child, Maiden Voyage, all that repertoire. And so when, he really didn't even know I played trumpet. So he put some music up in front of me at the only rehearsal, and I could read pretty well. And so he had the band playing, I had the music. And so he looks at me and says, "Oh, you read pretty good." I said, "Thanks. I was just doing it from memory, from listening to the
Yeah,
record."
yeah. It's a good trick.
Yeah, yeah.
So you learned.
I could have read the music even if I hadn't heard it,
Mhm.
but it wasn't even necessary.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember during this first rehearsal what the tunes were that you were learning together with Herbie then?
I think we played, it was actually all the repertoire from Speak Like a Child album.
Right.
I Have a Dream, Speak Like a Child, Toys. It was before the Mwandishi
Yeah.
concept. Yeah.
But had you seen the band with Johnny Coles, the sextet?
yes.
You
Yes, I
saw the
did.
band?
I saw the band was Garnett Brown,
Right.
Johnny Coles, Joe Henderson,
Yeah.
Tootie Heath, and Buster Williams. So
Yeah.
so I had a little precursor, rehearsal in my mind of
Yeah.
how the music should sound. Yeah.
So, what was your impression of that band?
Oh, they were great. I mean, they were all my heroes.
Mm-hmm.
I never dreamed that I was going to be able to play with people on that level. And then when Johnny Coles went on a sabbatical with went on a sabbatical with Ray Charles, I think,
Right.
for 6 months, Herbie needed a trumpet player for 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that gig on the recommendation of Woody Shaw, because Woody Shaw actually did the week before, but he was out in San Francisco playing with Joe Henderson, so he couldn't make the week in
Right.
San Francisco, so he recommended me, and that's how I got the gig.
Yeah.
That 1 week turned into the rest of my life.
Beautiful.
Is that
Beautiful.
something?
With Mwandishi, I've read that Herbie used to listen to specific kinds of music before the show, sometimes together with the whole band, like Ravel, Daphnis et Chloé, and
Oh yes, he also just right around the time that the Mwandishi concept, the advent of that happened. We were in Chicago, and Herbie was listening to Stockhausen.
right, yeah,
All these different kind of voices coming in randomly, and that
yeah,
kind of he had the band listening to that. It kind of formulated, because no jazz, quote unquote jazz band had ever played that kind of concept before, and so we of course, I've been listening to classical music all my life: Ravel, Stravinsky, Rimsky-Korsakov, Debussy, and Herbie loved Debussy.
yeah.
Obviously, just by the way he plays, you can tell that.
Hmm.
The specific way he plays.
Did Herbie point out specific things while you guys were listening to music together?
No,
Like it was
no,
just to get into
no.
the mood and
He did. Herbie never dictated what anybody should play or what anybody should listen to. He let everybody, follow their own instincts. I tell many people, Herbie never told me how to play or what to play, or anybody in the band how to play or what to play. He hired race horses, so he just let them run.
beautiful. Yeah, and he hired the right guys. I mean, what a combination of people.
Oh
It's
my God. It
hmm
was a dream band.
hmm
I mean, I think everybody in that band, Buster Williams, Billy Hart, Herbie, Benny Maupin, and myself and Julian Priester, they had all been out on the road. That was my first experience of ever playing with people of that caliber. I had never traveled on the road before. They
hmm
had been out there, but I don't think, they had been out there for a week or two at a time on gigs within different chemistries of bands. But I
mm.
don't think anybody in that band had ever played music with a chemistry like that,
Yeah,
where the band had longevity. Because we were together for over 3 years
yeah.
and worked like, Jesus Christ, 9 months a year for 3 years.
Hmm.
That's unheard of.
Yeah.
And especially in that day and age.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
have specific memories from being in the studio with that band? Like things that you really like to think back to?
Absolutely. That first record that I did, Mwandishi, because that was the first time I'd ever been in the studio. My
Wow.
first time, so and everybody in the band used to call me the Rookie of the Year, which
Yeah.
I was to those guys. So I was like a novice. But every time I talk about that particular record, I can see it in my mind's eye how
Yeah.
everything looked. It was like surrealistic and Panavision, Technicolor, everything.
Mm.
It was like supernatural people. Didn't even look real. Very surrealistic.
Yeah.
I can just see the vision in my
Hmm.
mind, and
Wow.
that's the main one that I can remember.
Hmm.
That first album, I think it was recorded in 1970,
70 or
from
71, something like this.
70
Yeah.
or 71.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I'm particularly drawn to those moments where this is something that I wanted to ask you about. Like I think you have the rare gift of And that's something that also that I admire about Miles. Like there could be the most crazy thing happening before you put the trumpet into your mouth and play. Like you're like group improvisation, multi-directional thing. And you have the gift, and I want to learn how this works, of channeling everything with the thing that you play, like being super focused and putting like whatever happened to before, you put it all into a new context when you start playing. Like how do you do that?
Together, I think that particular quality. I used to observe Miles do that before I joined Herbie Hancock's group. It should be like crazy stuff happening. He just waited, listened to what was happening, put his horn in mouth, hit one note, and everything just like magnetically comes together.
That's it. Yeah.
You can't do that with everybody, with that particular chemistry of musicians and musical beings. Everybody was listening to each other, and it afforded the opportunity to do something like that, you know. But you say you've seen me do that, observed me doing that. I got that directly from observing Miles very closely for many, many years.
Wow.
Yeah.
But there's also
and Herbie Hancock, who was Miles's piano player. So, you know, Buster Williams and Billy Hart all played with Miles. So it wasn't anything new for them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just in the place of Miles Davis, utilizing that particular tool.
But there's also something to be said, like, of course, yes, you learn it from a figure like Miles, but also you have to be able to actually hear something while all of this is happening.
Absolutely.
Like, how did you work on being able to hear and to formulate and to focus and really play what you hear?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. You know, when I was before that time, when I was playing, I'm getting ready to play, I would always have something pre-planned when I was going to come in and play. When I first joined Herbie Hancock, I tried to do that. It sounded like the band was around the corner having sandwiches, and I was by myself. Right. I learned that you can never have anything pre-planned to play. It's right at the moment of what's happening at that particular moment. I can't think ahead. I can't think behind about what happened. I have to be right there at that instant. Then something spontaneous can happen, like we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, it takes courage also to be that vulnerable also, right?
It takes courage and trust.
Yeah.
Ultimate trust. And I learned to trust all those people. And many times I would fall down, and the man was, come on, get up. You know, everybody's looking at you, Eddie. You know, it was impossible to make a mistake. Like Herbie Hancock taught me that. If you make a mistake, there's no way, I learned there's no way to play a wrong note. Everything became valid. So sometimes I feel like I didn't play well. I said, Herbie, I'm sorry. He said, oh, no, we just played that. And that. It's just as valid as this. There's nothing wrong. When you hear a sound in nature, you can't say that's wrong.
Oh, yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
So that particular concept kind of rubbed off on the way I approached music from that point on.
Beautiful. Thank you for checking out this episode. If you enjoy these conversations, please consider joining me on patreon.com/PabloHeld. My Patreon community helps me to pay for the running costs of this podcast and to develop it further into the future. There's 2 ways to join me there. The interview tier will give you access to lots of behind-the-scenes content. And also you get every episode before everybody else gets, so that's early access to episodes. The other option is the music lessons tier, which will give you everything from the interviews tier, plus 2 video lessons on different topics each month. Lead sheets, so whenever I transcribe a new song, you'll get it first. You'll be invited to listening sessions and much more. So these are 2 options for you to join me there. By doing that, you will be helping me to continue this podcast. So thank you, and let's get back to the episode.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite piece that you played with the band? Like, what was your favorite piece of that repertoire?
Well, the one that stands out to me is that tune, You'll Know When You Get There.
Yeah.
On the original Mwandishi album. That's sort of, and Ostinato.
Mm-hmm.
That was on the first album. It
Yeah.
was sort of like wide open spaces.
Yeah.
You know, there was a tonality based on some sort of tonality or other, or a certain rhythm, and whatever you played was valid.
Beautiful.
You know, and that kind of really opened my ears and my musical soul up and as an approach to improvising.
Mm-hmm. I was always wondering about You'll Know When You Get There was first written for Eastern Airlines commercial.
Yes.
But did you also
Yes.
Did you also record this with the band for the airlines, or was this a separate version?
Well, actually, the Eastern Airlines commercial was first. It's only 30 seconds. And then nobody improvised, just played that melody. Boom, 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 bing, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. It was very exotic, floating sound. So then when we got on the gig that night, Herbie said, let's play that melody and see what happens. Boom. And then things started to take form. Mm-hmm. He said, wow, this could be the concept of the band, of the Mwandishi concept. And that's how it began. Isn't that something?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Was there a song from the repertoire that you wish you guys played more often? Was there a song that you wish you guys would have developed a little bit more and played more live on the road?
Well, we kind of played everything live. Sometimes, you know, I'd say at least 3 or 4 times. You know, usual bands, they go to a gig, they might play 3 sets a night. Twice I remember in Boston, the gig started at 9:30 or 9 o'clock at night, supposed to play at 9, 11, and 12:30. We started at 9, ended the first set, played 1 tune on the first set, and the first set ended at 2 o'clock.
Ooh.
From 9 to no intermission, just a big cosmic explosion. We started off with You'll Know When You Get There, and we went.
Did you get there?
Went everywhere. So in terms of, I wish I played this tune or that tune. We played every night. We played more than we could have hoped for.
Right.
More than you could have imagined.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
I have many live recordings from this group.
Oh,
and,
you do? So
yeah.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because for me, it's always interesting to hear the Mwandishi repertoire, but then how you guys mixed it up with older pieces like Maiden Voyage and Speak Like a Child, because then the You Know When You Get There concept happens to Speak Like a Child, which is so out there. I just listened to Hamburg. You guys played in Hamburg 1971, and you played Speak Like a Child for a long time.
Gig. I remember that because that was our first tour, first time I ever went to Europe, and I remember Hamburg in '71. I do remember that.
Yeah. The version that you guys played of Speak Like a Child is so incredible and so out there. Wow.
Completely different from the original record.
Exactly.
Right.
that A minor vamp opens up for like the universe too, you know.
It expanded to infinity. It did that
Yes.
every night. Can you imagine working for 3.5 years, 9 to 10 months a year? I mean, the band evolved so many different places. It's unbelievable.
How did
Territory.
it how did it feel for you, Eddie, when then half of the band ends up on Miles's On the Corner during that time of being so
Yeah.
intensely in that band?
Yeah.
They go to the recording session and go kind of Miles takes the band a little bit. How did it
Yeah.
feel for you?
Well, it was right in the middle of the Mwandishi period that I was in Herbie's band at that time. And I remember hearing Miles in the Corner, but in terms of what I was involved in with the Mwandishi band, it sounded funny to me.
Yeah.
It really did. As much as I loved and revered Miles,
Of course.
I said, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah.
But, Miles Davis is a visionary. He always wanted to do something new. So what
Yeah.
can you say about him? He's
Yeah,
special.
and he noticed that there was something happening with this band.
Oh, absolutely, always. And Miles Davis is always going to have something happening. Yeah, yeah.
He also came to your gigs, right? He came to the Mwandishi gigs and
He
checked
used to
out the
sit
band.
right in front of me, staring down my throat. but I knew him since I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
He used to stay at my parents' house.
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
I
And give
remember
you
one
lessons
time-
also a little bit, right? He was also teaching you a little bit on the trumpet.
Say what now?
He was also giving you lessons from time to time on the trumpet when you were coming up, right?
Never in the formal sense.
Oh.
Lessons I got from him were just by observation. He
Right.
never sat down and said, "This is this and that's that, and do this, don't do." No, it wasn't like that.
Okay.
In the strict sense of a lesson, he never did that with me. But I remember one time he came to the gig, and I saw him. He came in the back, and I said, hey man, why don't you stop BSing? So he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, 2 trumpets, it's nothing new. There's Herb Alpert, Hugh Masekela, Dizzy Gillespie, Fats Navarro, Howard McGee, and somebody else, John Faddis and Dizzy Gillespie. You ought to hire another trumpet, meaning me, So he said, oh, don't start me thinking about that. So I turned around and said, you already are, and turned around and walked away. So he said, what? Wait a minute. And so he said, here's my number. Call me tomorrow and let's talk about the money. I said, okay. So I was at my mother's house in the Bronx. So I took the subway down to his house, knocked on his door. The little peephole in the door? Undeniably Miles Davis's eye. And all I could hear was, sad motherfucker. Never answered the door. I said, that was my fault. I should have known better. He likes to play.
Wow.
No,
And then with Mwandishi, after the breakup of the band, there's a
Oh,
sort
my
of a
God.
transitional period where a lot of you guys still play together on each other's
Yeah.
records. And like, how was
Yeah.
that time for you guys? I feel like there was a lot of love between all of you, and you kind of still wanted to stay together.
Oh, absolutely. When he announced that he was going to break up the band, I was heartbroken. The reason he did, because, during that 3.5 year period that we were together, when we worked, everybody got $300 a week. But we had to pay our own hotel bills, our bills at home. But that was big money then. Nowadays you couldn't buy a candy bar. But when he broke it up, he wasn't even getting paid. He supported that band for 3 years out of the royalties he had accrued to support the band, just to do that particular, experiment. But so he was in debt to his manager, David Rubinson, $30,000. So David could not control musically that band. So David Rubinson told Herbie, either give me my money or get rid of these guys. That's when Herbie, on the side, started rehearsing the Headhunters band. But we didn't even know it. He told us he was going to go back to school and study orchestration. I was heartbroken, so I told Herbie, I said, hey, man, if you need some money, I'll rob a bank. Don't break up the band. But he had to do what he had to do. And but as you say, even after he broke up the band, the remainder of the personnel in the band, when we played together, there was so much love and camaraderie.
Oh, yeah.
Camaraderie. It was obvious.
Yeah. On your records as well, Herbie showed up, and most of the band shows up, on Realization and on Mahal.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Well, actually, the Mwandishi band was still together on Realization.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, but they were just gracious enough to put it under my name. That was really Herbie Hancock's band.
Right, yeah, I see what you mean. But there's also like the albums with Norman Connors and, and Benny's albums and,
Exactly, and Mahal.
Yeah.
Herbie played on that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I wrote to you yesterday, Ecstasy. I wrote to you yesterday. I want to know about Ecstasy, the duo track between you guys.
One take of that. I just wrote out a little. I didn't write out all the notes. The part I was playing was just improvised at the moment.
Yeah.
There was no particular melody, and I just wrote out a sketch of the chords for Herbie. We did it in one take, and it was. We never did another one. It was undeniably magic, as you heard.
Yes, it sounds so fresh.
Yeah.
So fresh. I listened to it yesterday.
Herbie, it's like that.
Yeah. I listened to it yesterday like 7 times in a row, or like I couldn't stop listening, and it was on repeat.
Yeah, I love that particular cut. Yeah.
There's another track that's outside of Mwandishi now, but the Shades, is it Shades? There's another song of yours on a newer album where it seems to me that like there's no melody, but there's a set of chords. Some of them a little bit reminiscent of the Spanish.
Call that reminiscent of Ecstasy?
No. Reminiscent of that concept of just having chords without a melody, like flamenco sketches type of.
On my album?
Yeah.
Well, Herbie and I did a duo on the last album I did on Capitol called Malana. It was similar to Ecstasy.
I'll check that out. I'm not sure about this one, but I think this is with either Dave Kikoski or Kevin Hayes. I'm not sure who.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful.
Was it Herbie?
No. It's an album from the 2000s or something, or 90s or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Sorry.
It's a lot of music you've put out,
Oh, yeah. Seemingly.
Yeah. That's something that I wanted to ask you about. Like, okay, let's put it this way. Like, a lot of people are scared of the iconic, timeless recordings and especially songs. Like, if somebody calls Blue and Green, some people go like, I just have the recording so much in my ear. I don't know if I can approach Blue and Green. I feel like you're drawn to these pieces especially, and you go towards them with no fear and with a fresh approach. And I kind of have the feeling that you're fueled by the timelessness of the initial recordings, like Blue and Green, Dance Cadaverous, it never entered my mind. Those, those
well,
tunes.
You hit the nail on the head. I can't explain that. I mean, all the tunes you've mentioned, Dance Cadavers, It never entered my mind. Blue and green, even all blues too, something like
Yes.
that. So stylized. There you go. There
That's
it
my
is.
favorite Eddie Henderson record.
Yeah,
That's my
which one is
favorite.
that?
That's So What?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah.
What? I love that album.
Yeah, on that particular album, obviously it was dedicated to Miles's music, but I made the stipulation to everybody on the day they had heard all the original recordings on Kind of Blue and stuff. But I said, whatever we do, we're going to play the same tune, but do not do it like the original recording. Whatever
Yeah.
you do, don't try to imitate the original recording. And they facilitated that whoosh, and so it freed everybody up.
Oh yeah.
It in the same concept, but not like, because those original recordings were so stylized and iconic. It's easy to fall into the trap of trying to imitate. But we said, do not do that. I think we pulled it off.
Oh yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And the cool thing is, like, I hear the original, somehow it's ringing, but I'm hearing a new take on it.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
the two things are embracing each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, yeah. There's one thing that I wanted to comment on. You mentioned, I think when you heard that band, Herbie's band, play Cantaloupe Island,
Yeah.
and you said, "What are they doing?" You didn't know what we were doing. Is because the bass player at that time, Ira Coleman. Do you remember him?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. For some reason, every night he kept messing it up and jumping ahead 2 beats or pulling it, missing a beat here and there. So finally, before that particular concert, Herbie said, "Well, since you insist, okay, we'll do it like that." And that was
Oh
the
wow.
arrangement.
It's cool, yeah.
Yeah, a
But
lot of
this
people. Huh?
this arrangement kind of in a way also ended up on one of your albums.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
very cool. With
yeah,
there's a short, like, there's a 3/4 bar at the end of the form, and
yeah,
when it
yeah.
goes back.
Exactly. We subtract on this. There's the F minor for 4 bars. Then there's a D flat, and F minor, D flat, and then a D minor.
Right.
On the D flat, we subtract 2 beats, and coming out of the D minor, subtract 1 beat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very cool to also to compare these. I have a couple of bootlegs from the Gershwin's World Band, and then to compare it with your recording from your album.
Oh yes.
It's really really cool to see what
Oh
you guys
yeah,
did with this.
yeah. The evolution of it. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. You've done your homework well.
I just love the music. I love the
Yeah.
music. I listen to it.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah. There's one question I have for you is the thing is I hear when I hear you, I hear the love for your idols also. I hear how where you're coming from without
Uh-huh.
mimicking it, without copying it. I love hearing influences. I love this. This is like family. But what I'm always drawn, like with Herbie. Herbie is my guy. Maybe you've already noticed this, but Herbie is my guy.
Me too.
You know. So with Herbie, I've learned so much about Herbie when I started to check out his influences rather than just checking out Herbie. So this
Exactly.
is whenever I love somebody's music, I go back and try to find out who their heroes were.
Exactly.
You know. I wonder what is your take on that with your heroes and in general, like thinking about what does influences tell you about the artists themselves?
Yeah. Well, he told me out of his mouth that one of his main influences when he was coming up before he joined Miles Davis was Ahmad Jamal. He go
Oh wow!
listen to him every night, and also he loved the people from the bebop era Of course, he loved Bud Powell, and he liked Monk. He liked McCoy. He was aware of them, but he didn't want to play like them. Some people try to imitate their heroes. Herbie told me it's good to emulate them up to a point, but not 100% try to emulate it, get every note down. Just be aware of them and then leave it alone. And then just that little influence will rub off. I used to try to play play exactly like Miles, listen to the records. I used to try to play just like Lee Morgan, note for note, with the little innuendos. So I used to go over his house and practice with him. I used to practice with Freddie Hubbard. I wanted to play like Freddie Hubbard up to a point, you know. Then Woody Shaw and I used to practice together. I liked the way he played, but the way Woody played, I just didn't hear like that. You know, finally I realized, well, who am I? You know, emulate all these other people and hopefully all those emulations or influence will rub off and just expand my vocabulary. People ask me, they say, well, Eddie, I like your style. My style? It's just what I've copied, right, and scotch taped together. That's my style.
But that's only you can do this, because there's only one Eddie Henderson. So only you have your taste. You only have your love for certain kind of people. But that's the combination that you put together based on where you're coming from.
Yeah, people always talk about Miles Davis style or Miles Davis sound as if he just dropped out of the sky in a vacuum. Miles Davis's hero, who he copied, that not that many people know of, was, as you know, Freddie West.
Yeah,
of course. But so I remember when I first met Miles, the first time I played with Sketches of Spain at my parents' house for him. I didn't miss a note, right? And so I walked up. I'm 17 years old. I said, "Well, how did you like that, Miles?" He said, in his voice, he said, "You sound good, but that's me." and so then the next year he came back. He knocked on the door. I answered the door. So first thing he said, "Hey, Eddie, you still trying to sound like me?" But I had found out about Freddie Webster. I said, "You mean Freddie Webster?" If you had seen the look on his face, he didn't expect that. So he smiled and whispered in my ear. He said, "Everybody's a thief. I just made a short-term loan."
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how that goes. No, he emulated that, but actually he tried to copy it, but not that many people were, because Freddie Webster didn't record that much. And so not that many people in the listening world knew. They just thought Miles Davis's style. And I'm sure Freddie Webster, had his heroes too before him. You always have to be aware of your predecessors, because that's where the music came from.
Yeah.
Be aware of them, emulate them, don't copy them, because you want the music to go on and perpetuate itself, towards future generations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those memories also of practicing with Lee Morgan, with Freddie Hubbard. That's when I hear something like this, I want to know. I want to know what you guys did. I want to know what it was like to practice with them.
I got a little story that you will enjoy. First time I went over to Freddie Hubbard's house, I was intimidated, but he was nice, very kind. And for 4 years, I drive up from Washington, D.C., and Saturday morning, I'd be at Freddie Hubbard's house just watching him practice, emulating what he practiced, write it down, On Sunday morning, I'd go to Lee Morgan's house. He was very gracious. He says, "Get out your horn, Eddie." Put on the Arbin book, 60 duets, and one of the duets called Bolero. I remember I could know it by heart since I was 12 years old, but I pretend I was reading just like Herbie's audition, pretend like I was reading. So he said, "You want to play the top line or the bottom?" I said, "Well, I'll play the bottom. You're Lee Morgan." So he was actually, his shoulder was physically touching my shoulder. By the time we got to the second bar, I realized that Lee Morgan was going out of his way to blend with me. The great Lee Morgan, and here I'm just a beginner, right? And so it was like an electric shock. I screamed, "Ah!" like that. Lee took off his glasses just like this. He looked at me and said, "You dig? You dig?"
Yeah.
In other words, no matter who you're playing with, go out of your way to touch their soul through the medium of sound. Whether you're the great Lee Morgan or the lesser Eddie Henderson, he was going out of his way to make music with me. And that's not written in books in school.
No.
So I got from the horse's mouth. He said that's what Clifford Brown did to him when he used to go over Clifford's house when he was 15 years old. And Cliff would show him all the licks that Clifford played, that Lee Morgan played, and passed on to me. And I passed this knowledge on to all my students.
Beautiful.
To now.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Wow. When you think of Lee Morgan now, you can't talk to him right now, but if you could, what would you ask him?
What would I ask him? I really never asked him anything. It was more or less by observation. We'd play together. I'd listen and play. He'd invite me up on his gigs to play, and he was always very encouraging. "Oh, you sound great, Eddie," and then he would get on the mic and said, "Yeah, that was Eddie Henderson. That's the last time I'm gonna invite him up on my bandstand. He plays so good." He was cute, but
Nice.
just the humor he played with, the sense that when he played a ballad, as you know, Lee Morgan, and he was sassy, he was humorous, he was thoughtful, and so creative, And of course, he studied his predecessors, Clifford Brown, Dizzy Gillespie, and all the predecessors on the trumpet before him. And he really carried the torch. And even Freddie Hubbard said, as much technical prowess that Freddie had, he said the only one that intimidated him was Lee Morgan. Because Freddie, if he played first, and Lee Morgan would come in and play 3 notes and would get housed from the audience. and I asked Art Blakey, who did he like better, Clifford Brown, Freddie Hubbard, or Lee? Art Blakey, who played with all of them, he says, "Clifford's dead. I don't know what Freddie's doing. Lee Morgan, he plays from the heart." Whoa.
Wow.
What a mouthful.
Yeah.
Wow,
that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the opportunity to be around all those guys. It was so inspiring. So inspiring.
We just lost Roy Haynes. We just lost Roy Haynes. You played with him also. I read you played with Roy Haynes.
Yes, I did. The first day that Art Blakey hired me was in Central Park. This is 3 weeks after the Mwandishi group ended. Art Blakey called me and said, "You want to be a manager?" I said, "Sure." So the gig was in New York. I flew there, and half of the set, Roy Haynes came up on Art Blakey's gig, and 2 drummers at once. And that was my first day with Art Blakey. And actually, that was recorded. I understand that it just came out on.
I haven't heard this.
Art Blakey, 1973, in Central Park.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, he was great. Yeah, very nice man. Yeah.
I was always wondering how your practicing of psychiatry, studying medicine and psychiatry, how this affected you as a musician and a creative person?
Okay, that's a misnomer. I did have a medical degree, and I specialized in psychiatry only because the on-call schedule was once every 45 days, as opposed to once every other day if I did surgery or pediatrics. So once every 45 days allowed me to play the trumpet more. So that's the reason I veered towards psychiatry, but I never practiced psychiatry. I only practiced general medicine.
I see.
Now, yeah. Now, in terms of, well, what was the question again?
Like how this affected you as a musician?
Wow. It didn't help me play a C scale better. Did not. It was just one thing I did. It affected me in terms of the discipline of studying medicine, the discipline of studying in the medical field and psychiatry, studying, going to class every day. Went over in terms of the discipline of me practicing the trumpet every day too. So just that discipline I learned at an early age facilitated, the way I approach playing music. Discipline.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And all the people that I admired, like Freddie Hubbard, Lee, John Coltrane, of course, they practiced every day.
Did you ever have social interaction with Coltrane also?
Social.
Yeah.
He asked me I met him when he was playing with Miles Davis when I was in high school. He used to come up by my parents' house. I was so in awe of him. It was unbelievable. I remember one time in the middle of medical school, I went up and, like a fool, brought my horn in the club. And so he asked me, you want to play some, Eddie? I got cotton mouth. I got scared. No, my mouth dried up. I said, no, man, I'm in school. And ran out and put my horn in the trunk of my car and locked it. And then came back in. I said, whoa, my heart was still beating.
Yeah.
Just that he even asked me that.
Yeah.
Hell no. Not getting the best head with that man.
Which lineup would this have been? Was it with Elvin? Was it with Elvin and McCoy and Jimmy Garrison, or
with Elvin and McCoy? It's just sort of a derivative of playing with Coltrane. Yeah, but I used to see them when they played with John Coltrane.
Yeah.
And what an honor it was that they asked me to play with in Elvin's sextet and McCoy's sextet and McCoy's big band for many years. Yeah.
In the liner notes to Friday Night at the Black Hawk, you wrote, I really like your liner notes on that one. And you wrote a sentence that resonated with me. And it was, Miles' lines would cut through the changes vertically.
Oh, did I say that?
Yes, I want to know about. About this.
The way he played would permeate right through the changes. He would play melodies as opposed to oompa 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 oompa. The changes, he'd go right to the point. Yeah, that's the way it affected me.
Yeah, we were talking about cutting through the lines vertically.
Yes.
And I think that's also what I adore also about your playings. Like, you're able to find those special notes, the special notes in the chord. How they come out and how they shine.
Oh yeah, I think Miles, when I was very young, he just talking to him one time about this particular aspect of music. he called those consonant notes the butter notes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he told me, just play the butter notes. That at that
That's cool.
particular, this is around the time of someday my prince will come,
Right.
and then as he evolved, I remember Herbie one time told me that if you listen to that album called Mild Smiles, remember that album where they
Yeah.
played like Gingerbread Boy, for example, and the way Herbie is playing, Miles told Herbie, do not play the butter notes.
Yeah.
So Herbie said for about a week he looked like a praying mantis. You know, looking at the keyboard, he didn't know what to play. he go to play the butter note. That's what he heard. And it's whoa, and then all of a sudden he realized. And then he spread the deck, and he was free then. Yeah, use
Yeah.
all the 12 tones,
Yeah.
the butter and the salty notes,
Yeah. And more.
the sweet or the unsweetened. Yeah, yeah. But when you're first learning, just play the butter notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the chord dictates. But there's another side too, the non-butter notes, and that's when you can really take off, and have some fun. Because there are
Yeah.
no wrong notes. It's just a sound, a color, a rub of sound that most people in Western music are used to hearing the butter notes. You turn on the radio, you hear somebody singing the butter notes. But if you go to India, a place like that, you have quarter tones. It sounds really creepy. But if you're after living in India for a while, they sound like butter notes.
Exactly. It's just
You
a
know?
matter of perspective and
Absolutely.
experience also.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What we talked about earlier, the iconic tunes, I feel like when I look at all the records that you've put out and when I listen to them, I feel like you have, and we talked about this before, like you don't shy away from really going to those iconic pieces of the time of your life, basically. Like
Yeah.
also Zoltan, that you play Zoltan, from Unity,
I love it.
all
Yeah.
those things. Like my question is, how do you put together a repertoire for a record? How do you think about it?
If I have an upcoming record,
Yeah.
yeah, I try to think of the songs that have touched my life and my evolution from the time I started that I always wanted to play. And if I heard them on the record, the golden rule is be aware of the concept that they approached it, but if you're going to do it, don't do it just like the record.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But in terms of picking, like I'm supposed to have another record date coming up in a couple of months, and I really don't have the repertoire even together yet. I'm really not a composer. I learned to just write sketches and just let the rest of the personnel in the band, make a collective effort rather than a self-portrait
Right.
than me writing all the notes. I like a collective portrait, and that far supersedes any self-portrait. So that's the way I compose things. But I always try to pick tunes that people have not heard that much,
Yeah.
or iconic tunes that they have heard, and just try to put a little different cap on it.
And how do you get to that different cap on it?
One thing is picking the chemistry of people in the band, rather than just people that I know what I'm talking about in terms of that awareness. Be aware of those iconic tunes, but don't do it like the record. People like Dave Kokoski, Kevin Hayes.
Yeah.
I love those guys.
Yeah.
Billy Hart, Buster Williams,
Mm-hmm.
people who've been around a long time who understand that awareness, as opposed to hiring younger musicians who play well, but they don't have that experience and that awareness yet
Mm-hmm.
under their belt.
Mm-hmm. And like, okay, let's say you found a piece of you narrowed down a list of pieces. How do you prepare them for the band? Do you transcribe from the original? Do you go to the composer and ask for a sheet? Do you just name the tune and ask everybody else to just learn it, or how do you usually go about it?
I just get a lead sheet and bring it into the rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
And they've heard the original recording before, if it's one of those kind of tunes. And then they say, "Oh yeah, I've played this before." I said, "You played it before, but let's not do it like the record, but get another bass line."
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, on the album of mine, So What,
Mm-hmm.
Footprints.
Oh yes. Boom.
Yeah,
Boom.
yeah, the
Boom.
bass line.
Yes.
I just made up a different bass line.
Yes.
Completely different, the different vibe.
Oh, it sets a totally different vibe, and also the way that Billy plays on it, like he finds a different kind of groove for it. And
Exactly.
yes,
Isn't that Isn't that Victor Lewis playing on that?
I thought Footprints was Billy, but I might be wrong. I don't know.
I don't know. I might be wrong too. I don't really, well, whoever the drummer was, they played different.
Yeah, they did.
we
They did.
we concur on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, well, you needn't always sticks in my mind how you play the melody and how you not play the whole melody. You play,
Well, I got that from Miles. Bop-a-doo-bee-doo-bip.
babe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got that from Miles Davis at the Black Hawk.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to that, where he
Yeah.
plays verbatim.
Yeah.
I copied just like the record.
Yeah, but it does something to how the band then treats that
Yeah,
information. They
How
treat
how
it in
to
a
respond to
they
it
treat
then.
it in a different way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how does it work? How do you learn a standard?
Just by rote memory.
Mm-hmm.
Rote memory. Learn the melody.
Yeah.
That's how I do it first. First, I learn the melody
Yeah.
verbatim without any embellishments,
Yeah.
and then I attach the chords to it and see how the chords are related to the melody, and that's a learning experience in itself.
Yeah.
Because those old composers and especially lyricists, every tune, has some meaning to it. Learn the words to the tune, so you know what the tune means. Then you can interpret it validly in a valid context. That's why I approach learning a new tune.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have words, at least learn the melody. So if I get lost when I'm improvising, I always have the melody going on in my mind's eye, to keep my bearings.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I do get lost, stop, look, and listen to the bass. The root note. Then I'll get in my place.
Yeah. How was it for you during the time of Mwandishi? Were you still learning new standards at the time?
No, I wasn't even thinking about standards at that time.
Okay.
I was just playing that particular music. After the Mwandishi group ended, I was more or less playing like Open Skies. When you get there. I really had not that strict guidelines. Then after that ended, I realized that I had a weakness in my understanding of playing changes, of playing standard tunes. And that's why there's a gap, the little gap around the 80s until the early 90s. When I came back on Steeplechase, I started playing tunes with chords.
Yeah.
Because I made a conscious effort to learn how to play changes.
How did you do that? Can you describe this time? Because I noticed also in your discography there is a gap of no records, almost no records in the 80s.
I felt that I wasn't ready to record anything because after Mwandishi, I was supported by those guys who were above me, musically. And I just was like kind of sailing on the top of the crest of the wave. But in terms of me really knowing what I was doing, I didn't, be truthful. And so I went back and studied just basic how to play on the blues, how to play Green Dolphin Street, Up Jump Spring, Well You Needn't, Donna Lee, Cherokee, tunes like that, step by step, and relationships, and that has led me up to the present learning process, because you can't build a skyscraper unless you have the foundation.
Oh, yeah.
I felt that my foundation was weak. So that's why I kind of backed off, didn't record, and just come in gracefully, come back gracefully, hopefully.
Yeah, you did. Oh man, of course. And this kind of prepared you to be there then for the Gershwin's World Tour, where there was a mixture of that open freeness of in certain songs where Herbie was kind of inviting this kind of texture back into the playing.
Oh, absolutely.
But also on top of
those
tunes.
kind of things, Yeah. Exactly.
How was that experience for you? Can you share some memories from those tours?
Yeah, it was certainly apropos in terms of what we're talking about right now. It allowed me the opportunity to show how I had grown since the Mwandishi period, And I'm sure Herbie enjoyed it also from being out in space, coming back to Earth, and playing the butter notes.
Yeah. Yeah, I just heard a bootleg where you guys played I Loves You Porgy as well, which isn't on the album.
Yeah. Oh,
but
yes.
the way that you guys played this particular tune.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that vividly in the studio, just seeing Herbie, Ira Coleman, and who was it, Lewis Nash? I don't remember
Terry Lynn Carrington.
Oh, on that tour.
On the tour was Terry Lynn Carrington. I think also on the record is also Terry Lynn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was just enthralled with Herbie playing so beautiful. Yeah.
I was trying to transcribe Cottontail, the arrangement of Cottontail.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me how you guys put this together? I know what's happening harmonically now, but how did you learn that song together with Herbie?
Well, up to that point, I had never played it before, to tell you the truth. Herbie more or less kind of rearranged the changes on the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, definitely. And he just told me what it was. I said, okay. The outside part was pretty straightforward. It's AABA. On the B part, he rearranged the changes. I remember it's just some stuff coming down chromatically, as I remember. I don't remember it right now, though.
It's kind of minor chords that have
minor chords coming down chromatically.
A different dominant attached to each of those, which gets you to the next minor chord.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you guys did the beautiful arrangement of Someone to Watch Over Me with that beautiful intro that Herbie wrote.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Right. And on that tour, it was Ellie DeGibri playing saxophone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Terry Lynn and Ira.
Yeah, and you wrote this beautiful take on the changes of One Finger Snap.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? It's an intricate little melody, and then you blow over the changes of One Finger Snap. I'm wondering...
Because only that first 4 bars is written.
Yes.
After that, it's just improvised.
Was this? Did you do this arrangement after the Herbie tour, where you played One Finger Snap a lot of times, or was it afterwards?
I used to play One Finger Snap before that tour, and then at the first rehearsal, I played it just like the record, like Freddie Hubbard played. Ba-do-da-da-dee-da-dee-da, ba-da-da-da-da. Herbie stopped and said, no, 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 no. That was on the record. Don't do it like that. It's okay.
Yep. Yep.
Just like what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you pick up the trumpet now these days, what are you working on?
Just basic, first trying to get a nice sound.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the most important thing is sound.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not that impressed about how high one can play or how fast or how loud. The thing that touches me and all the people that I admire, whether a vocalist, a cello player, or piano player, or saxophone player, or trumpet player, is sound, where you can recognize somebody's musical identity just by two notes or one note.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the true mark of an artist. So that's why I try to instill on all my students. You know, like Gary Bartz used to tell me, you know, Eddie, you can play one note a million different ways, textures of sound. So I try to experiment with sound. You know, when I practice long tones. I always practice soft. Miles Davis told me that. Mm-hmm. He says, you know, because on trumpet, flesh against steel, if I'm trying to get young trumpet players want a big sound, they're going to blow the chops away. Flesh against steel. Mm-hmm. So I always try to practice soft as a whisper. I can always play louder in the heat of passion. So I just do basic calisthenics, lip slurs, you know, my scales in every key. I used to practice licks where I could plug it in here and there. I don't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. I just let my ears be ready at the moment for what's happening around me, music at the time, where I can be appropriate. But in terms of practicing licks, no, that's not the name of the game for me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And some people still do that. I try to stay away from that. Yeah. And I always try to. A lot of trumpet players, they practice all day thinking they're practicing a lot. I just practice if I have a gig that night, sparsely in the morning, because I always want to come to the gig fresh. Yeah. I don't want to be kind of over practiced and warm, and by the end of the third set, I can't even make a sound. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I know what you mean. Although I'm a pianist, so I'm very spoiled in that regard, you know. I mean, of course, we have to prepare and we have to practice, but it's not as physical as it is for a trumpet player.
Yeah. To have longevity on the trumpet, you know, I used to ask Miles Davis, you know, in terms of vibrato, everybody has their own different vibrato. Miles' forte, what he's known for, is no vibrato. Mm-hmm. I asked him about that. I said, well, why do you don't have a vibrato? He says, when I get old and start shaking, then I'll have vibrato.
It makes sense.
When I had Parkinson, then I have a vibrato.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, he was funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But even then, at the end, he didn't really have a vibrato so much, right? I mean...
No. That was just his signature. Yeah. And I used to ask Herbie about that, Miles' sound. He said, like, as opposed to like Lee Morgan, Clifford had his vibrato, Lee had his, you know, thing. I have mine, Woody Shaw had his, Harry James had his. Mm-hmm. Herbie said Miles' sound was like looking out in the universe, a monolith of ice blue machine steel monolith. He says it's ice cold, but it's warm. Wow. I never forget when he coined it like that. Yeah. It's ice cold, but warm.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. When somebody brings a tune to you, Eddie, what do you appreciate? In a lead sheet, but also in vocal explanation. What do you appreciate?
Just give me the melody in my key in B flat, and that's it, and the changes.
Do you want the changes in B flat or in C?
In B flat. And the key of the trumpet, yeah. A lot of people read in concert. I can do that, but it facilitates me for my brain the way I look at things. The melody in my key and the changes in my key.
Yeah, I've seen a few lead sheets of Wayne Shorter's that he wrote for Miles. It even says 4 Miles on the lead sheet, and Miles apparently used to read the melody in C, but the changes in B flat. No.
Oh.
Or the other way around, like one of the
vice versa.
Vice versa. Yeah, one of those.
It's the melody in B flat and changes in C.
Yeah.
Many people do it like that. I like them both in B flat. In the key of the horn. I just relate it better in my brain.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the last standard that you've learned?
The last standard that wow, boom. Sounds funny. The last standard I learned was it never entered my mind. On the last record. Even though I'd heard it many times by Miles, it was so stylized, I stayed away from it. I said, well, I just learned it in a different key because he played it in A flat. I played in F. I heard the changes. I mean, I heard the tonality, the ballpark of sound, but I had whoever was on that the last record. I forgot who it was.
George Cables?
It was George. I had George write out the changes. Then it all made better sense to me. You know, yeah.
That's a beautiful, beautiful version that you played there on the record. Just when you called me, when you came into this, to this thing, I was just still listening to it, and so I saw your face and was still listening to that version when you came in. So. It was very fresh.
That I just learned, You Know I Care, that ballad by Duke Pearson.
Duke Pearson, yeah.
Yeah, I just learned that about a year ago. A beautiful tune.
Beautiful, yeah. Yeah, we just talked about what you have to do or what you want to do on the day of a gig. Is there anything else that you feel like you have to do on the day of the gig, or like things that you treat yourself with, or?
Just normal stuff. Get a good night's sleep beforehand. Warm up in the morning. Don't touch the horn until I get the gig. And just maybe 10 minutes before I get on the stage, just do some long tones, real soft. And then come there so my lips are fresh. That's it. and listen what the band is doing.
Yeah. Most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. What music has recently inspired you, or that really, really touched you?
Recently. Well, when I listen back to this stuff, I'll say the older stuff that used to inspire me, and hearing it again. Stuff like John Coltrane's Love Supreme. Wow. Unbelievable. John Coltrane's Expression, that album.
Oh, yes.
And also Interstellar Space.
Yeah.
I love it because I used to see John do that in person. And so it has meaning for me. And of course, always going back in the past a little more, all my heroes, listening to Clifford Brown, his virtuosity, his sound, his creativity, listening to Freddie Hubbard and Lee Moore, and Don't Let Me Leave Out Booker Little. He was unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
To reaffirm my passion, for playing this art form. Really, nothing that has been written recently have I been listening to. Just to reignite the spark that
Yeah.
initially got me going.
Yeah. There's this album by Richard Davis that you played on.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah. And you're
With Joe
playing
Henderson,
with Joe Henderson, Billy Cobham, and
Stanley Cowell.
yes. How was it to blend with Joe Henderson?
Oh, he was such a grand master. I mean, it's so easy, you know. He just melted, you know.
Did you also play in his band?
He hired me a couple of times. Yeah.
With
Yeah,
which configuration would this have been?
The first time he hired me is myself, Joe, Cedar Walton, Herbie Lewis, and Clifford Jarvis.
Oh, that's a cool drummer. I really
This
liked
way
Clifford
back-
Jarvis.
Yeah, this is way back in 1970. Yeah.
And you played all Joe's tunes, Joe's classics.
Yeah. No rehearsal. He
Yeah.
didn't ask me whether I knew it or not. He just started, but I've been listening to him. I just happened to know the melodies, you know, but
Yeah.
he was awesome.
I think this
Yeah.
is maybe this is a little bit lost these days, but I think this is how you would get a gig back in the day if you just know the book of somebody and
Oh, yeah.
happen to
Yeah.
be there and get a chance to sit in or be called, be at the right time at the right moment, but just
Yeah.
know someone's music.
Absolutely. The reason he called me, he said, "This is Joe Henderson." I said, "Oh my God, you know, can you make the gig?" I said, "Yeah. When is the rehearsal?" He says, "Your credentials in order. You play with Herbie Hancock. I'll see you on the bandstand." So the first
Wow.
tune he calls was Invitation. So he played first. I was so excited. I played over my head. He took another solo. He sandwiched me in. So I said, "Oh, that was great, Joe. What do you want to play next?" He says, "Invite," meaning invitation. I said, "We just played it." He said, "Yeah, but it felt so good."
Oh, wow.
He did it a second time. I swear to God, the third tune, Invitation.
No.
That was his favorite song.
Wow.
And each solo, he went to a different universe. I mean, it's unbelievable. He was so thorough.
Wow.
Yeah. And he told me, he said, it's not about learning 1,000 obtuse originals. Learn one good.
Oh, yeah.
Anything. And
Yeah.
he learned them very good. Yeah.
That's something that when I talked to Billy Hart, he told me this. He said it's not about how many things you can play. It's about
Yeah.
how many ways you can play one thing.
Exactly. Same thing that Joe was talking about. Exactly. Yeah.
Eddie,
Is it-
thank you so much for talking to me and
No, my
taking your
pleasure.
time.